I'm Philip Ward, Editor-in-Chief of Aren'tManyEurope.com. Burnout is an increasing problem in radiology, and it was addressed this morning at the opening press conference. Dr Mauricio Castillo from Chapel Hill in the US was a speaker at the meeting, at the opening conference. Dr Castillo, thank you very much for joining us at ECR.
Philip, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Good. Could you tell us a little about what you said at the opening press conference this morning?
Well, a few hours ago, we discussed three topics. We discussed the topic of burnout, which is very important in radiology, dissatisfaction, which is something intimately related to burnout, and gender inequalities, particularly with respect of the role that women are playing in radiology. And I think that because of the limited role that women have been playing, this has led to less radiologists, less workforce, and thus that contributes also to the issue of burnout and inequality.
Okay. Do you sense that burnout is becoming more of an issue in radiology? Is it increasing problem?
I think so. I think that we're working longer hours. I think that we're doing more imaging studies than ever. And I think that because of this, we feel burnout and we are losing the purpose of what we do. It's becoming less meaningful. I did mention this morning, too, that by 2025 in the United States, the radiology workforce will be 20% less than what we need, and the overall physician workforce 25% less. So there's a significant need for more physicians and more radiologists. And since the majority of our medical students are women nowadays, and there are gender inequality issues, it has been calculated that only 2% of women, more or less, are going into radiology. So I think that we need to improve this.
Right. Now, what practical measures, practical steps do you think radiologists can take to protect themselves against burnout? What would you recommend?
Well, I think that is not only one thing that we need to do, Philip. I think that we need to do several things. If you go see a psychiatrist or a psychologist for this issue, I think that they will recommend that, first of all, you exercise. Exercise gives you a time for yourself where you can do something that you enjoy and is restful. And like I was telling you before, I have a friend that works for the state of Texas government, and the state of Texas government actually is giving those employees 3 periods of 30 minutes during a week to go exercise, with the idea that they come back from the exercise, they're healthier, so they won't miss that much time at work, and they will be better people. Their sense of well-being will be improved too.
Okay.
So that's one thing that we ought to do. I think that the other thing that we need to do is we need to learn to say no, accept those responsibilities that will be of benefit to us in our departments, and say no to the other ones. And people who know me will laugh at this because I'm a person who has never learned to say no to anything. But we have to learn to say no. The other issue is as we get burnout, we feel frustrated, we feel angry at our colleagues and our patients, and we tend to behave in ways that are not correct in our reading rooms. So we have to learn to manage this disruption of the behavior. In the United States, as you know, malpractice is a very, very common issue, and malpractice seems to be a very stressful period in life for many physicians, and where they feel significant burnout. I think that we need to limit perhaps the number of hours that we work, create more part-time jobs for females and males. And something else that will come and help us with this issue of burnout and the amount of work that we do, and this is an issue that scares a lot of radiologists, is machine learning and computer-aided interpretation or diagnosis. I think that if you think that in 2025, only 7-8 years from now, our radiology workforce is going to be 20% less than what it should be, who is going to do the work?
Exactly.
The machine will help us.
Exactly. Now, Saturday's big session that everyone's looking forward to is on burnout. Professor Hoenink from the Netherlands, she practices a form of yoga to relax and to interview. Would you suggest something like that as a way of coping with the strain and the pressure?
Well, I think, like I said before, I think that any type of exercise probably helps you cope with stress and the sensation of burnout, which, as you may know, burnout is now a well-defined medical syndrome that leads to emotional exhaustion, a depersonalization, and the sense of a purpose or meaning that has been lost. So those three things define burnout, and I think that exercise is a very good idea. It doesn't matter which form of exercise you do. It can be yoga, can be jogging, bowling maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, okay. Have you had any radiologists in Chapel Hill who've actually had to leave their job because of stress, because of burnout?
No, but something that I want to speak in the lecture is a study that came out of Chapel Hill a few years ago. The Department of Psychiatry did a study to measure the degree of burnout in our residents, and the overall degree of burnout was 55%. Not surprisingly, the specialty that had the highest burnout was general surgery with about 92%, but very surprisingly, the second specialty with the highest burnout was radiology, reporting that 82 or 83% of our residents feel completely burnout. And then the Mayo Clinic did a big study of nearly 40,000 physicians in all specialties. And what they concluded was 55% of those physicians felt burnout, nearly 25% of them were clinically depressed, and surprisingly, 7% of them had considered suicide as an end to the sensation of burnout. So it is a big, big issue in medicine, I think.
Yeah, there was a UK trainee who committed suicide at the end of last year. Aunt Minnie Europe reported on it. That shows, I think, the depth of the problem. And this was a young man in his late 20s.
So this is, what you say is very important, because although most of the information that I will use for the lecture comes from the United States, I got many emails from residents outside of my own program and people from different countries, including my country of origin, Guatemala, where people have this feeling of burnout. In the U.S., maybe it is the same in England. We're very lucky. We can have a single job, and that job allows you to make enough money to live. But in many places, like Latin America, you must work your university job and then 2 or 3 other jobs on top of that. So you're leaving home at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, coming home at 10 or 11 o'clock at night. And obviously, nobody can work 20 hours a day without feeling fatigue and burnout.
Okay. Well, I think it's wonderful that ECR is addressing these issues, is approaching it in such an open and an honest way. We encourage everyone to go to the session on Saturday. We hope it's a great success, and we wish you well this week.
Okay, thank you very much.
This is Philip Ward wrapping up for AuntMinnieEurope.com.